going to jump into to question time now. So I'm going to read some of the questions that have already popped up. So Brian Oldland said that, should I apply for JobSeeker myself or for my company, or should my accountant do it? So Matt, that's a question for you.
Yeah, so I think the stats are something like 700 or 750,000 businesses have registered their interest in applying for the job. It says JobSeeker. I think you're referring to JobKeeper. So with respect to JobKeeper, we don't actually know the application process formally yet. At this stage, the government haven't released that. So at this stage, let's see what's released. Let's see how in depth that process is, and then hopefully it's intuitive enough that you can either do it yourself, or if you need a hand, we're more than happy to help.
Cool, thanks, mate. It's also another question for you, Matt. So from Brooke, as an employee, is it their responsibility to register for the JobKeeper allowance, or is it an automatic process for them, provided the employer has registered as a business?
Good question. So definitely with JobKeeper, the responsibility is on the employer. So not only to register, but also to then go through the process for their employees and I guess define the eligibility. That'll be part of that application process, I'm assuming, when we get to that point, once we know what that looks like. And then the responsibility of the employer is also to inform the employee that they have registered on their behalf and that they either are or are not receiving that.
You're a popular boy today, Matt. You got another few questions to get through. So with the JobKeeper, this is from Karen, with the JobKeeper, can you compare, say, Feb turnover to April turnover, or does it have to be annual comparison or comparison to actual or future projected? Yeah,
good question. So this, in respect of the simple response, it's year on year GST turnover listed on your BASs. If we're not looking at year on year because A, you've grown, B, you've projected bigger numbers for whatever reason, it's then going to fall back onto us to, I guess, put together an application that the Commissioner has the discretion to then still approve based on the information that you're able to provide. So if compared to February, and February was considered normal, since then you have dropped off 30%, then you are going to be able to apply to the Commissioner for, special ability to still be involved in JobKeeper.
Yeah. And another one, mate, sorry. So does it apply, so this is anonymous, so does it apply to startup companies that are yet to start trading? So the plan was to commence next month, but given the situation, we had to hold back.
So I think if you go back to some of the fundamental eligibility criteria for JobKeeper, the first one is that the employee had to be employed at the 1st of March. So it's not to say that you are not entitled, but if none of your employees were employed at the 1st of March, then you won't be eligible for that item.
Cool. I'm going to give you a break now, Matt. So for you, John, how much money is left in the QBDF?
Yeah, that's a good question. So up until about 4 weeks ago, they had about $9 million left out of the $80 million. So, and I think because it's a state initiative and we have an election in October, I think that $9 million will be drawn down between now and September.
Cool. I'm just jumping into the chat area as well. Just hold on a second. So once again, I think for you on Matt, if our cash flow, this is from Scott, if our cash flow has been decreased by 100%, meaning that we're unable to pay wages to staff, is there any special consideration arrangements to allow us to access JobKeeper?
So this one's specifically covered in that Q&A sheet that I put the link in the presentation to. The answer is no. And unfortunately, in that case, they do refer back to the other items of stimulus that they've produced, namely being talking to banks and in Queensland. I know Scott's got a Queensland-based business. There is also the state-based up to $250,000 loan that is pegged to wages that you may be able to access to help with that cash flow in the short term. So the answer is no. You would need to go back and source funding to pay the wages to then be reimbursed by the ATO.
Cool. I think this is a question for John. It's from Nisha. What is available for startup businesses with no employees nor revenue but has some overheads? What is available to landlords whose properties were vacant at the time of lockdowns so cannot get another tenant? So there's probably two questions there. One's on the landlord side of the fence and the other one's maybe on the grant and also some of the stimulus package. So maybe I hand it over to the first part of the questions is what's available for startup business with no employees or revenue but has some overheads. I think, John, you mentioned there's some grant. There are some grants available in that.
Absolutely. So there's some very early stage seed type grants available. So if it was a Queensland domiciled entity, there's Ignite grants, so which will fund between 100 and 200,000. And then also in some of the other, Victoria and New South Wales also have seed-based grants. Also encouraging groups to go and talk to their incubators or accelerators, and they do, if you're successful in those type of programs in an early stage, they provide some funding available, but it will and generally does come with obviously an equity investment from those places as well.
Cool. I think Nisha's just written a note saying in Western Australia, so not sure what the landscape is like over there at the moment.
Look, again, most of the states all have their own innovation packages, and it depends whether your startup is a sort of a more of a traditional business or into the innovation that has IP. Certainly the ones around IP get a lot of the government innovation support and those early stage sort of seed funding initiatives. However, there might be similar to the Victorian where there is a small business support program. It's worth checking with the state government programs over there.
Yeah, and I mean, we can do a search for you as well, John. I think that's available. You can do that for
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. So the second part of that's what is available to landlords whose property were vacant at the time of lockdown so cannot get another tenant. Is that covered on some of your stuff, Matt?
So I think the answer to that, you probably need to go back to the formal question of, are you a registered business? Do you have an ABN? And then looking at your turnover as that property owner compared to the previous 12 months. You may still technically fall within the definitions, even though at the time of lockdown you didn't have a tenant. So it's not a no, but it's just worth investigating how long you've owned that property for, whether you're formally registered as an ABN holder, and what that revenue looks like.
Cool. Another question for John. Are the 250K loans only to be used for working capital? Can it be used to improve machinery?
So I'll have a go at answering this one, but it might be a Matt one as well. But my initial is no. It's only for sort of more operating type costs like your rent and other sort of working capital operating costs, not for the replacement of capital items. Yeah.
So there's two lots. There's the state-based one in Queensland, and there's the federal one. They're both pegged effectively to wages and working capital in terms of what you're eligible for, particularly the state-based one. The federal one the federal one is run via your bank or administered via your bank, and so they're still going to look at the opportunity to borrow based on normal banking principles, is my understanding. It's just that the government is, I guess, guaranteeing 50% of those loans, but those loans from the banks are actually only 3-year loans. So if you're looking at machinery and those sorts of things, they're probably not the best terms in terms of paying back, a capital item like that. You may be able to get more preferable terms, longer payback period via another banking mechanism anyway.
Cool. Good advice. Another question from Karen. If the employer stands down the employee in early April and doesn't pay them and they do not apply for Job Seeker, can the employee be paid back to April for the JobKeeper by the employer? Matt, probably it's an interesting question. It's okay to take it on notice if you need to get back.
Yeah, I might give you a call back on that, Karan, if that's okay. I'll just go and double check, because my understanding is that it's effectively to ensure that the employee maintains ongoing connection with the business. So there may be, some technical points in there that we just need to tick off before we can confirm that.
Okay, cool. Question from Simon. I think it's also for Matt again. So we have an employee who has managed to secure another job during this time. We need to replace them with another of the same, like another bookkeeper. We expect that we'll reduce turnover by 30% over the coming months. Because we're only replacing a current employee, do you think we'll be maybe able to, they'll be eligible for JobKeeper for the new employee?
Unfortunately, I don't think so. I think that they're fairly specific around the fact that the employee needed to have been with you at the 1st of March this year, and new hires will not be eligible for JobKeeper.
Cool. There's a question from Jason, but not sure whether he actually completed the question. So if you have needed to ask that question, just put it into the question and answers. Got another question from Scott saying, can the state-based grants in Queensland be used to buy out other businesses related debt?
The answer to that's a specific no. There's a specific carve out for the state-based loan that says you can't use these favourable terms to replace existing debt in the business.
Cool. So I think that's all the questions we've got at the moment. I was just going to take this time quickly to talk about, let me get back into my screen so everyone can see my screen now. Just in terms of, we have created a site. Just let me get through some slides. Sorry. We have created a weekly forum site on Workplace, so people can actually go into that and register for it. Some of the links that we send out post this particular forum. I encourage everybody to go to that site. It's a place where you can ask questions, chat, share information, receive information. All of the previous weekly sessions are being recorded and are there available for everybody to access. We really strongly suggest that you do that because it's a great place to get all the information in one spot. So we really encourage you to do that because we think it's a good place for us to be able to share information with you in a really easy, seamless way. The other thing that I wanted to just cover off from last week was that Sarah McCrum, who spoke to us about sort of our well-being and those sorts of things, she provided some free relaxations and also stress-related products for free for us, just for us to be able to access as part of being connected to Prime. So I'm just putting that up there, but more importantly, we spoke about the fact that we've got a podcast. So Sarah and I have got a podcast that we've just released last week. It's not necessarily up on all the podcast apps. It's currently just, we've put on the screen there, the Spirit of Business at libsyn.com. That's the place that they're all stored at the moment, so you can access those. Now, we've recorded 3 or 4 on the specific topic for business owners on how to deal with different ways of dealing with the coronavirus in business and how to deal with it from a personal sort of perspective. And that's just something that we're once again just doing as a service to the community that we have, which is our business owners that we want to support. And so I really encourage everybody to put that in their URL and start to listen to some of that sort of podcast material that we've produced, once again, specifically for business owners for us to support them. That sort of brings us up to close to being 12 o'clock. I just noticed there might have been a couple more quick questions, which I'll quickly answer with our last couple of minutes. So we have a director who bills us as a contractor under his ABN. Can he be used as one director in JobKeeper, Matt?
My understanding is yes, based on that Q&A item that we had today. So where a director is being reimbursed via some other mechanism than wages, but does provide, I guess, labour to the business, then one director can be eligible for JobKeeper.
Cool. And last question for today, given the time, from Brooke: if an employee has been stood down and has sought a temp casual job in the meantime, can they still receive JobKeeper allowance from their main employer as well as their new casual wage?
The answer to that's yes. So they absolutely can. And so it's not a means tested item as long as their main employer applies and both the employer and the employee are eligible based on that stand down, then they can receive both the 1,500 JobKeeper plus the new casual wage.
Cool. Thank you. That brings us to the conclusion of this weekly forum. Just wanted to thank once again Matt Smith and John Driscoll and Mark Bowe for presenting today on some great content in those presentations. Looking forward to catching up with everyone again next week in this session. So it'll be week 5. As I said, all the sessions have been recorded and that are on our workplace site. Love you to join that. It's a great place for us to stay connected when we're in a very isolated way, and I'm looking forward to staying connected with everybody in this particular forum as well. So next week we'll go back to the normal day of Friday, given tomorrow's Good Friday and a public holiday. We did it on the Thursday, so we'll go back to Friday at 11 o'clock. We'll be talking about some leadership in difficult circumstances and how to lead effectively. Mark will take us through some of his strategies around how he actually gets to pivot businesses in such a short period of time. And, if there's any further update on the stimulus package, we'll let you know about those sorts of things or any law changes that might be coming through. So thank you for everybody for attending, and we look forward to seeing you next week.